Alright everyone, there's an interesting article link in the description, so you can take a look at that. And on one level, it's actually totally factual. Right now, leftists are being booted out of, like, city council and mayoral positions in cities across the United States. This is why, by the way, the now legally beleaguered mayor of New York City is attacking the Biden administration, for instance, on the border crisis. It's becoming a problem for left-wing governments to actually remain stable because the current administration is messing up so badly, and the Democratic Party has adopted all of these leftists into it. And there was a surge before of the new left, which people like AOC, the Geek Squad, Rashida Tlaib, all of these others, there was a surge in the number of leftists that were entering these positions. Cities, towns, and also at the federal and state level for their governments. State houses and Congress specifically. And so the government now leans more left. And the government is failing the people. You have the border crisis, the bad economy, etc. So people are punishing them at the ballot box. The problem with this article is that it's overstating the death of urban leftism thing. When you swap out someone who is a self-professed socialist with a hardline liberal Democrat, a la a Gore or something, on most issues you have not fundamentally changed. You've simply taken a step back from the id pol wokeness and said, okay, it's not going to get you elected anymore. We'll hush-hush about that. Everything else remains the same, and nothing will change. Urban cities in the United States have been blighted for decades and decades and decades. They didn't become blighted because of a bunch of self-avowed communists. They became blighted because of the machine politics that often encompass city government. When we look at Chicago, the most ultimate example, Chicago's government is machine politic. It's a body politic that is entirely insular. You have to be part of the club before you're going to get the blessing to even run, let alone possibly win, because of the demographics of Chicago. What's Chicago known for? It's also called Chirac for a reason. It's known for incredible poverty and gun violence, and at this point a huge homeless crisis as well. With hundreds of thousands of migrants storming in and taking up all the shelter space, they're literally allocating land to build new places for, the impoverished, for the disempowered. But this wasn't due to the far left. They weren't the ones that screwed it up. They helped, and they would like to screw it up more. But they're not the ones primarily responsible, are they? The current incarnation of the U.S. government is liberal, effectively. Liberal not in the sense that it should be applied. Liberal, typically liberal in the old sense and in the European sense, it means more like classically liberal and standing for freedom and things like that, and limiting government. When Americans use the term, and I know this can confuse people from other countries, what we really mean is the reasonably left. But it's not terribly different from the further left, from the so-called progressives, like a missing link Democrat like Elizabeth Warren. She claims to be progressive. How are her views on most issues? How many times has she voted differently from her small L liberal colleagues? Like 2% of the time? 3%? About the only thing she deviates on is like insider trading. She's been hammering away at that. Apparently she does not own an actual stock portfolio and prefers mutual funds and bonds. Well, again, even Satan would have one redeeming quality, I suppose. I hear he's a big fan of folk music and the fiddle, so, and he invented rock and roll. Elizabeth Warren is nuts and a crazy liberal, but at least she's got one issue on which I can agree with her. With Fetterman, by the way, becoming the next Joe Manchin in the eyes of his electorate is probably the funniest thing that I did not predict was going to happen this year. Urban leftism can die in the sense of the outward, ironically being honest with people, professing yourself to be far left. Well, I'm a proud socialist and I don't care. Socialism ain't a dirty word, but it's no longer working. Because people are disproportionately blaming left-wing politics for all the problems. Correctly, by the way, in most cases. Not all of them, though, admittedly so. But it's the liberals that are facilitating it. The Democratic Party being run by that liberal core that used to have also the Union Dems, they're fleeing the party, not without good reason. They're the ones that mainly design the policy. They're the ones that attempted to broaden their tent to win elections by absorbing a bunch of socialists and so-called progressives, which is literally just socialism as well. In the first place, it's not going to change. It doesn't matter if your city decides to kick out the Karl Marx shirt-wearing, pink-haired, beret adorned leftist who, used to run a commune or something like that, and you put in the suit-wearing, liberal, machine politic Democrat. Nothing's going to change other than the fact that they will be more presentable, and you're not going to have a scandal where you find them spraying Marxist graffiti on the State House on an odd hour. That's the only thing that's going to change. It's more presentable socialism, effectively. You've taken leftism, and you've simply stripped back the bad branding, and then you try to be very quiet about the fact that, on 90-95% of things, you agree with those so-called progressives. The policy will remain the same. They might temper it slightly. They might be less acerbic towards the cops when they're addressing crime as an issue. They may be a little more forceful in calling out national policy at the border than the far leftist who, sits outside of the homeless camp handing out ham sandwiches. That's the only difference you're going to get. The death of urban leftism being exaggerated by the article, even though it is fundamentally correct, if you use the terms that the far left is attempting to use to rebrand itself. So don't expect, New York City to elect another Rudy Giuliani and get its shit together. Don't expect Chicago to all of a sudden become a GOP enclave, or San Francisco to have a libertarian mayor or something like that, because I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Although there is a wave building across the board where, especially in small town America, where the crime is seeping out, and in certain parts of New York and Illinois, things are getting so bad that you are seeing a significant shift in voting tendencies. Not going to flip these states, but it's certainly trickled into places like Pennsylvania and Michigan that are winnable. That's about all. Peace out.